The Apereo Open Academic Environment is a multi-tenant platform, which means that a single physical installation can host multiple universities and institutions at the same time. This has a wide range of advantages, including ease of deployment, cost sharing, the potential for interinstitutional collaboration, and many more. In this screencast, we'll be showing how easy it is to spin up a new tenant on the fly, configure and skin it, and we'll see that in a matter of minutes, a tenant can be ready to go for people to start using the system for real collaborations. The Open Academic Environment has two levels of administrative access and interfaces. First of all, OAE has a global administration interface, where one or more global administrators can manage the available tenants, create new ones, and configure them. Each tenant also has a tenant administration UI, where one or more tenant administrators, which are usually people from that institution, will be able to skin the tenant and make a more limited set of configuration changes. As we are creating a new tenant in this screencast, we're going to go through the global administration UI. As we can see in this global administration UI, there are currently two tenants already available, one for Georgia Tech and one for the University of Cambridge. When we go to the Georgia Tech one, we'll be able to see the Georgia Tech tenant with its configured skin and other configurations. When we go to the Cambridge one, we'll be able to see the Cambridge tenant, which has a different set of configurations and a different skin. In this screencast, we're actually going to create a new tenant for Marist College. But before we do that, we'll actually show that this tenant doesn't exist yet. Okay, so now we're going to create a new tenant for Marist College. Okay, so we can see that the Marist tenant has now been spun up on the fly. Before we actually go there, we're going to make some configuration changes first. OAE allows for a wide range of things to be configured on the fly. For example, we can configure whether or not a tenant is permeable, which allows for interinstitutional collaboration. We can configure multiple ways in which people can authenticate to the system. We can configure default privacy settings. We can configure the default UI language and many more. In this case, we're going to start off with the obvious one, which is authentication. OAE allows for many different types of authentication. In this case, we're going to disable local authentication. OAE also supports Google authentication, which we'll leave disabled for now. It supports Twitter authentication, which we'll disable as well. It supports Facebook authentication, as well as Shibboleth authentication, CAS authentication, and LDAP authentication. In this particular case, Marist College uses CAS as their institutional authentication provider. So we're going to enable CAS, give it a name, enter the URL to their CAS server, which is their real production CAS server. It's CAS, and then the other settings should be correct. Save this configuration. Okay, then the third step before actually going to have a look at this tenant is to skin the tenant. There is a skinning UI which allows for non-technical people to skin a tenant. In this case, we've had a quick look at the Marist branding style guide, and we'll be using some of the values that are in there. First of all, we're going to configure the Marist logo, as well as a branding image that will be used on various pages. And here we configure the colors of the links in the system. and configure the colors for the different types of buttons in the system. I'm going to skin the notifications. Okay, and then the final one is the secondary clip, which contains all of the actions that can be taken on various items. Obviously, there's many more things that can be configured that can be skinned in this skinning UI. I think this will be a good start. Okay, so we'll save this. Now we're actually going to have a look at this tenant that we've created on the fly. So we can see that the tenant is now available. It has been started. The skin that we configured is now available as well. And we should be able to see underneath the sign-in link that all of the authentication strategies that we disabled are not showing up. And the CAS one, the one that we have enabled, is now showing up and is available as an option. So if we click this, we should be taken to the actual live Marist CAS authentication service. And I'll be using my Marist Friends account to sign into the system. So I'm now signed in to the tenant that we have just created. So within a matter of minutes, we've created a tenant for Marist. We configured it, and in this case we configured it to use the Marist CAS authentication, and we skinned it. And then we've shown that we can access it straight away, and we can successfully log into the system. In other words, in a matter of minutes, this tenant is now ready for people to use.